You know how scientific studies sometimes seem to completely contradict each other? One day coffee's good for you, the next it's bad. Well, we're about to dive into a paper that has a really blunt and honestly powerful answer for why that happens. It argues that the biggest problem in research today isn't about the data or the methods, it's something way more fundamental.
And there you have it. The paper's answer is just that direct. It's the theory stupid. Now, this idea that theory is the absolute bedrock of good research is more than just a catchy phrase. It's really a call to action for every single one of us, whether we're making science or just trying to make sense of it.
So here's the plan for this explainer. First, we're going to unpack what this theory problem really is. Then we'll get clear on what good theory actually looks like. After that, we'll look at a powerful tool for building it called falsification, explore the pressures that get in the way, and finally, talk about how we can all be part of the fix. Okay, let's get right into it with the theory problem. If you've ever followed a topic and felt like the research just wasn't adding up to a clear picture, well, you felt this firsthand. The authors argue we're not just a little confused. We are in a full-blown theory crisis. And the damage from this is very real. When we don't have a clear standard for what good theory is, our scientific journals get clogged up with all these disconnected, inconsistent ideas. Peer review can become totally subjective, based more on our reviewers' personal taste than on objective quality. And probably worst of all, researchers feel this immense pressure to invent brand new theories just to get published, which just creates a sea of scientific noise. So let's just demystify this word theory for a second. At its heart, it's not some complicated academic concept. It's really just asking a simple question. Do we actually understand what's going on here? You know, for a manager, it's understanding what actions actually lead to better results. For a researcher, it's about getting clear on what we know versus what we still need to figure out. It's the basic framework for understanding anything.
Okay, so if we have a theory problem, what does the solution even look like? Well, to get from all that confusion to some real clarity, we first have to agree on what a strong, useful theory is supposed to be.
So here's the deal. A good theory does way more than just describe what's happening. It gives us the best explanation for why it's happening. It is not enough to just say X is related to Y. A truly strong theory has to include that magic word, because. X is related to Y because of this specific mechanism. That's the engine of real understanding.
Now, to help us think about this better, the source gives us this absolutely brilliant distinction. Think of a single study's finding. That's a unit theory. It's like one sentence making one specific point. But that sentence only really has meaning inside the bigger programmatic theory, which is like the ongoing conversation or the settled science on that whole topic.
And this is the crucial part. For any new sentence to actually push science forward, it has to connect to the existing conversation. It can challenge it, it can refine it, but it cannot just ignore it. A theory that contradicts everything we already know without explaining why those old ideas were wrong doesn't create clarity. It just makes things even more confusing.
This brings us to a really powerful and maybe kind of counterintuitive tool for building better theory. We usually think of science as being all about proving things right. But it turns out the real solid progress often comes from proving things wrong.
The paper offers this fantastic analogy for this. Imagine the truth is out there somewhere in a big field. Our theories, they're like a fence we build around where we think the truth is. Falsification isn't about tearing that fence down, it's about running tests that show us where we can move the fence inward, getting it tighter and closer to the actual truth.
Now, it is absolutely critical to understand that falsification is not the same thing as your hypothesis just failing. That's just failed confirmation and honestly doesn't teach us much. It's basically the scientific version of shrugging your shoulders and saying, well, that didn't work. Falsification, on the other hand, is a deliberate, strategic process of pitting plausible explanations against each other to see which one is left standing. The source actually calls this process a horse race. You don't just test your favorite theory all by itself. No, you line it up against its toughest competitors. You design a clean race, what they call a strong inference test, and you let them go head to head. The one that best explains the data wins, and it becomes our strongest explanation, at least for now. This is how we systematically build better, more reliable knowledge. So, if we know how to build better theory, why isn't it happening all the time? Well, that leads us right into the big systemic problem. There are these incredibly powerful incentives in the academic world that actually work against this careful, constructive process. And the root of the problem can really be boiled down to this one phrase: an A is an A. This is all about the academic obsession with publishing in a tiny handful of elite A-list journals. We've created a culture where you publish has somehow become more important than what you publish. This didn't just happen overnight. It actually started with a good intention back in the 50s to make business education more rigorous. But over time, as schools tried to figure out how to measure research quality, they took a shortcut. They started relying on journal ranking lists. And now, that shortcut has basically become the main highway, driving everything from who gets hired to who gets promoted.
And the damage here is huge. I mean, if only A-list articles really count, we're basically ignoring the vast majority of scientific work being done. It pushes researchers to chase safe, trendy topics instead of tackling the hard, really important problems. And maybe the worst part is that it teaches the next generation of scholars that gaming the system is more important than actually creating knowledge.
But it is not all doom and gloom. This is a problem that we created, and that means it's a problem that we can fix. This last section is all about an actionable path forward, but it's one that requires a real collective effort. This is such a powerful call to arms because it frames the issue as our shared responsibility. It's so easy to just blame administrators or the ranking systems, but real change has to come from the entire research community. It is our problem to solve, together. And look, everyone has a role to play here. Deans need to look beyond those simplistic rankings. Reviewers have to value studies that rigorously test theories, even if the results are messy or don't support the hypothesis. Journals can adopt formats like registered reports, where a study gets accepted based on its question and methods before anyone even knows the results. And of course, researchers, we have to recommit to the hard work of building coherent, testable theories in the first place. This chef analogy just nails a crucial point about transparency. Right now, in science, we really only ever see the perfect, finished dish. We never see the messy kitchen, all the failed attempts, the dead ends. But a new chef can't learn how to cook just by eating a fancy meal. We have to start showing the entire process, mistakes and all, because that is where the real learning happens. All right, so let's boil this all down. First, remember that good theory is simply about understanding. Second, always distinguish the individual sentence from the bigger conversation. Third, use falsification to build a stronger, tighter fence around the truth. Fourth, recognize that the A is an A culture is a huge obstacle. And finally, know that improving how we do science is a job for all of us. And that leaves us with one final, really crucial question to ask ourselves. The next time you come across a new piece of research, what's your first thought going to be? Is it going to be, where was it published? Or is it going to be, does this actually help us understand the world better? The answer that we choose collectively is what will shape the future of science.